All right, with that, let's bring in Pennsylvania Democratic Congresswoman Madeleine Dean, a member of the Trump assassination attempt task force. Congresswoman Dean, very good to have you with us today. Richard Blumenthal had this to say about his reaction to what he has learned in this investigation. I just want to play this, and then I want to get your thoughts on the other side, if I may.
I think the American people are going to be shocked, astonished, and appalled by what we will report to them about the failures by the Secret Service. But I think they also ought to be appalled and astonished by the failure of the Department of Homeland Security to be more forthcoming, to be as candid and frank as it should be to them in terms of providing information.
I mean, I'm not looking forward to being shocked and appalled by what the Secret Service, how they're functioning and how they functioned on this day. But obviously, we have to understand what happened here, Congresswoman. Do you agree with him that it's that bad?
What I will say, thank you first, Martha, for having me on. But I take a little more sober approach. We are in the midst of this investigation. It was good to be in that classified setting with Director Rowe and members of the task force, bipartisan task force. And what we will reveal through hearings and a final report in December are the failures. What I think is going to be important is to identify that we're not going to find just a single crack in the protection offered by and required by the Secret Service. There are going to be multiple areas of failure of protocol, concerns over resources, as well as in this heightened environment of threats of violence, which is completely unacceptable, what new protocols have to be put in place. So I think we're going to find, and the director was very candid yesterday, to say that there was, at a minimum, a serious communication failure.
I mean, there's a lot of things that pop into my mind when I think of that day. And one of them is a Secret Service agent who can't get her gun reholstered. Disturbing images of people, calling out that there's someone on the roof, and the total lack of communication. And I think all of those images, I am sure, are very much in the mind of the former First Lady. And here's a statement that she put out about this a few days back.
The attempt to end my husband's life was a horrible, distressing experience. Now, the silence around it feels heavy. I can't help but wonder, why didn't law enforcement officials arrest the shooter before the speech? There is definitely more to this story, and we need to uncover the truth.
I think that is the central question that's on everyone's minds. Once they realized they had a suspicious person within shooting range on that property, why did they allow the former president to speak?
Well, that's a very heartrending statement from the former First Lady. My heart breaks for her and for her family over the fear that they had to go through and still go through. But I will say, you can see by this bipartisan task force, we're asking that exact set of questions. That's something I've asked everybody we've talked to. How did they ever let the president take the stage when there was somebody suspicious on the adjacent grounds? We traveled to Butler, Martha, to do an on-site visit. And immediately what strikes you, I'm forgetting, I believe you were there. What strikes you is the proximity of the whole place and how it is that that building, the AGR building, was not within the protected scope. They had law enforcement there, local law enforcement there, but it was not within the perimeter of protection, which is a stunning thing. So as I said, there's going to be an awful lot of questions. We're asking specific questions about failures, about timelines, about communication. I think we're going to find a few things. Some serious failures. We're also going to find some heroes, those who identified, whether it was people going to the rally, who identified there's a person on the roof before even law enforcement was able to communicate that. We're going to find some real heroes here who reduced the loss of life. But in the meantime, what happened that day is completely unacceptable. And I assure the First Lady, this is not silence. We are doing serious investigative work. You saw the number of transcribed interviews we took last week, 15 more this week, collection of thousands of pages of documents. We're going to ask all of those very questions so that something like this never happens again.
Well, we hope, you know, some people have been removed from their jobs. Some people are retiring. We hope there's some serious accountability at the Secret Service, and most importantly, a restoration of people's confidence in this elite agency that should never allow something like this to happen. So we wish you all well in your work.
Martha,
and we hope quickly, if you can, Congresswoman.
Can I just, echo that, because that is literally the charge of Chairman Kelly and Ranking Member Crow. While we'll get to the bottom of this, we also owe it to the American people to restore their confidence that they can attend a rally like that they can be a part of something bigger than themselves and be safe at it. 100%. So that's part of our mission.
Yep. Thank God the worst did not happen on that day. Thank you very much, Congresswoman Madeleine Dean from Pennsylvania. Good to have you with us today.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.